Good afternoon from Thailand, and we are live again, the TCP Growth monthly webcast. Hello, everyone. If you are watching this from Facebook or Twitter, feel free to comment and say hi to us. It's a great pleasure today to host another web series with Margot and two of our guests today on behalf of TCP Growth. Today we have an interesting topic to discuss, but before we start, I want to introduce our guests. We have the founder of TCP Growth, Margot, and perhaps you can start introducing yourself first.
Hey, hi everyone. Today is not my first time coming here and to be here with John and two guests to talk about cross-cultural growth topics. And yeah, welcome to all of you joining us. And we are having a very interesting topic today, which is about how to adapt to various corporate cultures. And we have two wonderful guests here, and their background is amazing. And I'm sure that everyone would learn a lot from them. Welcome you all.
And then we have Thomas from China HR Consulting. Hello, Thomas.
Hi everyone. So I'm Thomas from I'm based in Shanghai. I work for FSG, the HR and corporate services in China, and we help 5% or 4% of Fortune companies with their corporate service needs. And I have been now living 7 years in China. Before that, for my life in the US, and originally so I hope to contribute with my different experience from China to today. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Thomas.
And we also have Jen. From Shanghai, I believe. Hello, Jen.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Jen. I'm based in Shanghai as well, and I'm a cross-culture storytelling coach. I was born and raised in Shanghai, but I was educated in Hong Kong and the US. So in all my life, I've been sort of navigating between the Western and Eastern culture. So for this topic, I'm really looking forward to, as you know, I'm sure there are a lot of stories we can share with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. So today's topic, how to adapt to various hierarchical corporate cultures. Man, I don't even know when to start because it's, can you hear me fine? Okay, I just want to check, great. We're in Asia, most of us here are in Asia. And when it comes to being an entrepreneur or being a managerial supervisor in any corporate, we come across people from all around the world, and we also, work with local staff. And so the corporate culture shapes how we communicate with one another. And when we are from a different background, from a different cultural setting, there's always going to be challenges, right? So I think hierarchy of a company is something that is very unique, depending on where you're working, who you're working for. But I just want to start off asking this question. Perhaps we can start with Jan first. If there's, and because you're from Shanghai, you're very familiar with the local culture. Do you think there's pros and cons about a very well-defined hierarchy, or is it mostly just good or bad?
Sure, there are pros and cons, right? So I think hierarchy doesn't really only just exist in a Chinese society. Hierarchy is everywhere, in every country. Of course, hierarchy itself, it's a way to organize, right? It's a social order. But in China, it's probably, you will feel that, you will sense hierarchy probably in more kind of social scenario than the West, because hierarchy doesn't simply just exist in a working environment. Hierarchy itself, it's actually very much underpinned by culture. So that's why, in China, the hierarchy, it's not just simply organizational chart, right? So it's also a mindset, because in every aspect, in every layers of Chinese society, there is hierarchy, and because the Chinese are very much organized by groups, right? Social groups. So within each of these social groups, there is hierarchy. So some people see hierarchy, whether it's in business environment or in social environment, as inefficient and slow. This may or may not be true, but they do exist and cannot be ignored.
I absolutely agree with what Jen just mentioned about it is a mindset. And also hierarchies, this term, you know, what I come across is a lot of friends. They would say, oh, hierarchies is very Asian, is very Chinese. But I guess, you know, in my career experience, I worked for actually like European family business as well, or some Western more conservative type of companies. And I also feel like there's a kind of hierarchy there. So my understanding of a hierarchy is pretty much a chain of command, a very, very clear chain of command. And the organization structure will be more like a triangular shape. The top will be only like maybe one or two bosses, and then on the bottom are more people. And everyone knows where they are very clearly. I guess that will be the definition of a hierarchy, and it's every culture has hierarchy, but in Asian culture we are more on a collective type of mindset, and everyone has their own position, and then rules of, you know, the chain of command. So I guess that's why people have the perception that is an Asian thing or Chinese thing. But my experience tells me that everywhere has that.
I totally agree. I think hierarchy basically defines someone's social roles, right? So as I just mentioned, probably particularly in a Chinese society, or maybe even, you know, Asian society, right? So hierarchy can be found in more different kind of a social scenarios or social situations. Not like in the West. I mean, hierarchy of course exists in Western companies, in Western, you know, working environment. But out of that, I think out of that particular environment, I think it can be quite equal, right? I mean, quite flat. But then it's not so much the case in a Chinese or Asian society.
Right. Now, Jen, you already mentioned about the common criticisms of having a very well-defined hierarchy, which is inefficiency. So I want to ask Thomas this question. Do you find that working in a very well-defined hierarchical corporate in China is very inefficient, in fact? Or do you have a different experience you want to share?
Well, I think thank you very much for the question. I think it really depends how the hierarchy is. So I think every company has an original chart, and every company will have hierarchies. So the decision maker or the big decision maker, there is no point where everyone being on their own what they want. So I would just say that complexity. If complexity in for example companies in China or in potentially there can be complexity of making. Many people need to sign a certain decision, so that might take a longer time. And there is maybe less of a risk. This is a more of a risk averse way of deciding. And can be businesses or businesses started by a family or a these traditional Chinese businesses that the single person makes the strategy for the company decisions. In that context, things moving very fast. Decisions could be done very fast. But of course, there's a lot of pressure on that single person, and if the person should leave, or something happened to that, then they have a lot of issues involved. Then you have an in between that might have, you know, short, like something in the middle, and really it depends on culture, division of decision. So think in China, for example, in many actions, I would say a full range of complex, you know, one-person decision making. And as the company get bigger, I would say the complexity increases. There is a startup, it might be just one person deciding, versus if it's a big action, then there will be many layers.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you.
Now, because of this complexity of the hierarchy structural in Chinese culture, or a lot of the Asian companies, how should one try to navigate if they're not a local, if they're not familiar with this the setting? Is there any tips, or is there any insights, Jen, you can share? If let's say I'm not familiar with this, what kind of advice would you tell me when I start off working in these companies?
So when you start off working, I think the first tip will be just try to observe first. So in the Chinese culture, when you don't really know your environment, so you basically keep your head down and do what you're told. Just observe, because whatever you do, so you need to perform first, right? You need to earn that trust. So I think the first thing is you have to do what you have to contribute. You have to do what you are expected to do first, and then and then maybe observe what is around you, and observe the relationship around you. So by then, once you earn the trust, I think you can voice some of your ideas. So I think the first tip is basically do exactly as you're told, and basically keep learning, and then figure out what's the company's expectation for you, right? Because the Chinese sort of in terms of job description can be quite vague sometimes. So you basically you have to they're not very clearly defined. So you need to figure out for yourself what is expected of you. So you need to identify the motivations and goals of your boss and your colleagues. And this once you really performed your duties and have the goals in your mind, when the time comes, I think you can voice your own ideas.
Now, this could be quite counterintuitive for anyone, especially those from the Western culture, because oftentimes it's encouraged to voice out their own opinion. It's encouraged to challenge other people's ideas. Doesn't matter if they're a subordinate or if they're a supervisor. So do companies have a handbook, or is there like a training program to tell like people not from local to say, okay, you're new, better do what you're told? But because then if they don't know these messages, or if they don't know, there's chances that there might be conflicts between the foreigner and the local staff in an organization. No.
That's why I also heard a lot of processes that, like, international people, for example, they went to they got a job in China or in Asia. They got a lot of problems in the beginning, And then after some time, like it's a growth mindset, after some time you try and error, you got some problem and you learn from it. And then after a few years, the person will understand, as Jan said, in such setting, sometimes from job description, might not be very clear. A lot of the communication is like nonverbal. So you have to really observe and know where exactly you are. And not just about yourself, but you also need to understand the dynamics between different people, and who is your boss, and if you want to communicate or giving feedback, who will be more likely to be more open to listen to you. But usually in this type of situation is your direct boss, the supervisor will be the appropriate person. And the biggest mistake that I've seen, my observation is that, like, when a person doesn't understand the cultural hierarchies, and they thought, okay, whatever I feel, or my observation, I want to just share it to everyone, and maybe I can tell the big boss, like the owner of the company, or my observation in a very neutral way, or even put the facts there. And they said, oh, these are the facts, and I'm not offending anybody. But in a hierarchical organization, it might be a little bit offensive, or some people might take it as offensive, that there has to be a very clear chain of command. And so, so my point is that you have to learn, and you can choose to learn in a harder way, or you can learn in a quicker way. But it really takes experience.
I'm curious.
Sorry. Oh,
sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well,
Jan.
I would just say, as we mentioned at the beginning, hierarchy is very much underpinned by culture, right? So if you're a foreigner, you come to a Chinese culture. So this is the culture you probably need to adapt to. So even though you are smart, you're someone with a brain, but if the Chinese culture plays out in such a way, so at the beginning, probably better for you to, if you want to voice anything, right, voice it in a kind of a respective, differential way, than just trying to show how smart you are. Because when you do that, it's you also remember you have to give your boss face as well, right? The face culture, and
yes, giving face. Correct.
Quite important.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious to know if Thomas has any personal experience he can share when he first start working in China, and your interactions with your subordinates or your supervisors. Is there any light you can shed on the topic, Thomas?
Yeah, good question. I would just first of all agree that in the beginning it's important to be respectful, to be polite. And try to understand the culture, the environment. I think every company I've worked at three internship companies in China, and the company sure was very different. Of course, the sizes were different, but even for the two companies that I have been working for the past, there's also very different. From when they when they finish, how strict they are, office hours, and then too. I think also culture within the department also comes. So it's important to observe of other people interacting with that person. Are their opinions? I have to say that Chinese people are really great in that, at least in work environment, respect the foreigner. And I think I believe they feel that foreigner has done something wrong. They did like a different culture. I think in general they are very rich foreigners and me. That is why, at least in my circle of friends, a lot of foreigners that are working in China have a good time, and rarely I see big issues. At least big issues that the foreigners are going through. Read that the job description tends to be, and then things, and in my experience, a lot of information, and I think information that is written in job description. If the reason that or the department want to would not want question is need to do certain tasks, write many things in the job description. When it comes to like specific ideas or issues, I personally tended to speak directly one-on-one with supervisors. I have an idea, or there's a misunderstanding. For the picture taking of the department, and I was meeting couldn't attend, so the department took picture of the team, and I wasn't part of it, and they framed it. So I felt a little bit like that I was not part of it, and so I found time, and asked the boss of the department come and speak with me. She had time, and we talked about it. It seemed that another also was missing that day. Just took it because they hadn't. So maybe we would have done it differently in a Western company setting. But again, it depends on the supervisor and the person managing these situations. So yeah, I would this question like this. There'll be many. There's also issue. I have to working in Chinese Mandarin language environment, and that choose in the beginning understanding. I can people also when for example when people manage Chinese people. I think there is a language level where you end up that people feel that are very fluent, but there are still certain words or certain topics that you might have hard time understanding, and then becomes to the manager you three times and tell them I still didn't understand you what you said. Situation people have to bear and try to find. Ask them to write it out so they can translate it. And yes, there the language instances language issues uses a word that they means one thing. It means like, for example, I used which means more pardon, doesn't mean. So I used it when I had to say sorry, and so in situation like that, it created a reaction I didn't expect, but at the end, you learn as you go. Basically, this is what makes us successful and stronger as we go into multicultural experiences.
Thank you, Thomas. I apologize for the technical difficulty because there seems to be a little static from Thomas's microphone. But if you're watching this live, I encourage you to also ask questions for the speakers. I definitely have one question for Jen. So, when is it the right time to disagree with your boss explicitly?
I think what Thomas just mentioned actually was pretty good. So it's not like so much you can't disagree with your boss, right? As we mentioned, it's very much about the face culture. So it's about how you bring out your disagreements. So as Thomas just said, maybe would of course never criticize, never point out your boss's mistakes in front of a group of people. It will be always advisable to talk to him or her, maybe personally in private, to save that face. So that's my advice.
And what about to subordinates? Like, I think one thing that can be challenging is also asking subordinates to be open up, to share their ideas. And when the supervisor is on a higher, like a very, very like solid, rigid hierarchy, subordinates are not feeling as comfortable to voice their own opinion. So how do you encourage that interaction within organization?
That is very much true. I think that will eventually come down to the leader himself. So even though in a relatively flat kind of organization, because it really runs in the Chinese culture. As I said, hierarchy, it's not just your organizational hierarchy, right? Hierarchy also has to do with one's age, experience, titles, right? Of course. So if you're older than me, then I kind of have to be differential to you. So it's not just so much just because you are my boss, even though if we are at the same level, but you're older, maybe you're more experienced, then I see you as senior. So in that case, encourage your subordinate to speak up. It really depends on the leader itself. One thing I kind of noticed is as even the international companies in China, as the management being more and more localized, right? If your direct boss is actually a foreigner, I think the environment, the atmosphere will be more different. They will, the subordinates will be more encouraged to speak up. But then as more and more senior managers are being localized and replaced by Chinese managers, that can change. So because it's so embedded in a Chinese culture, it's simply the subordinates, because it's this hierarchy, this social roles, it plays a very complex relationship. So people afraid of, you have to navigate, as you also say, you have to navigate this very complex environment. Okay, one thing to avoid mistake is try not to say as much, right? That's a safe way to avoid mistakes. So if you want your subordinates to speak up more, I think it really depends on what kind of leadership you execute.
Those are great tips. Now, we have both speakers from China right now, so this is more China-centric when we talk about the hierarchies of a corporate. But do both of you, or do either of you are seeing or noticing any changes within this organization, or a more traditional mindset within corporate cultures in China? Are some companies going more westernized, as in like flattening out, being more fluid when it comes to different levels of management? Do you notice any changes over the years?
I think there must be changes right here and there, because as China opened up more, and as I mentioned, it's very much down to the leader himself or herself, right? Her style or his style. So as more and more people, educate overseas, and they of course they brought back a lot of kind of Western style. But as a society, I don't see a lot of change. Yeah.
Thomas?
Yeah, I definitely agree. The supervisor or the boss, their style and culture they develop in this, and there is difference in China for sure. For sure, kinds of that are in China. I also think that there's more fees that that work abroad and they back. I think the number is about 70% of those that start coming back. So they are learning styles, and they also are bringing these new ideas or different ideas. I also think differences in industries. So for example, Chinese in China, because I look into Silicon Valley, and they might be more flat. For example, I remember talking to a friend Baba. So they have the 996 type of work environment, but they for example, on Saturday they are supposed to send everyone in that perhaps the department or a group of people. They are supposed to share ideas by email. They supposed to report on what they think, and as well as what are the new ideas they have the company, and this they're supposed to do every single week. Now this is clearly an idea of the company, that creative environment of sharing ideas. Working for a state-owned company, I was encouraged to pick up in the beginning and share my ideas in meetings. So it really depends in the individual who is the supervisor and the culture that they have. I think perhaps lesson of this ultra culture where only one person speaks, one listen. But this still exists in China. But I think there be less of this because people realize there is a value in shares and getting different opinions.
Okay, great. Margot, you talk with a lot of leadership in both Hong Kong and China. How do you tell these bosses to open up or to accept new ideas?
Well, as Jan also said, or Thomas also mentioned about, actually it really depends on the leader himself or herself and her the personality, and I think disregard whether it is a hierarchical system or a very flat structure. When you work with someone or lead with a team, I guess getting more information and to understand the feedback from your direct reports or team is very, very important. So I would encourage people to be more curious wherever you are, even though when you are a leader or you are a team member, just stay curious by asking questions, by or if you see something, if you have some feedback, try to communicate in a very genuine way and a proper way, according to the culture of the specific environment. So to answer your question, how to encourage especially more conservative or traditional Asian leaders to take feedback, is just feedback is a kind of there's value for feedback, so try to capitalize your feedback for your own growth, for the growth of your team and department. So and never take things too personally about, I heard something, it's like I'm not doing well, but actually this is a great thing. You're not doing well today, you can do better tomorrow. So again, my motto, growth mindset and be curious.
That's great. Thank you, Margot. So we're running out of time today, but I just want to get one last quote from each of the speakers. If there's anything about the topic today, how to adapt to various hierarchical cultures, corporate cultures, what would be the one-liner that you want to tell someone about this? Jen?
So I think if you plan to work for a Chinese company, you will need a lot of patience, because initially you will be very much frustrated before you actually figure out how the system works. But as I said at the beginning, hierarchy is very much underpinned by culture. So see that as an opportunity for you to experience a new culture. And then this can be very interesting and positive impact your life as well.
Patience, definitely a very good virtue. Thomas?
I definitely agree with patience. It's a big one, and also add be open-minded. Be open-minded to different ideas, experiences, because ultimately this might make you stronger, smarter, and for the future.
That's great. Thank you. Margot, do you have one liner to also?
Yes, I think besides patience and be open-minded, definitely respect is very important. Everywhere, every place, has different type of system, and as long as you have the attitude of respect differences, respect their own culture, and you'll be naturally more curious and to adapt to the environment. I think the attitude and mindset are very powerful.
Thank you. This is great. Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Thomas, Margot, of course. We want to wrap up this webcast today, but we will also have one every month. So if you're watching this and if you enjoy this, please feel free to comment, ask any questions. We'll try to answer you. And stay tuned to our next TCP Growth webcast, where I and Margot will invite different speakers to come in here and share different topics regarding cross-cultural discussions. So once again, thank you, every one of you here. I will see you all another time, and stay tuned. And please don't forget to follow our page and engage with us.